Well, for the fourth straight UFC pay-per-view, a belt changes hands via first-round finish. It happened at UFC 198, of course, when Stipe Miocic knocked out Fabricio Verdum. It happened at UFC 199 when Michael Bisping knocked out Luke Rockhold. It happened at UFC 200 when Amanda Nunes submitted Miesha Tate. And tonight, here in Atlanta, Georgia, it happens when Tyron Woodley knocks out Robbie Lawler to become the new UFC welterweight champion. What a scene here at the Phillips Arena. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel, Helwani. This is the MMAfighting.com post-fight wrap-up. That is my pal, Jed Meshew. Jed, your first UFC pay-per-view as a credentialed media member, and what a show it was, highlighted, of course, by Tyron Woodley winning in the first round. Set the scene for us. What was it like when Woodley knocked him out with that massive right hand?
It was great. I mean, it's been a great experience, and that was a nice cherry on top. You get a phenomenal finish and kind of a historic moment. Robbie Lawler's been this Cinderella story that everyone's just been in love with, his resurgence, and now you get the new guy who's been saying for 18 months while he's been on the sidelines that he's the champ, and he did it. He's the champ. Yeah,
he called his shot and really did it in an emphatic fashion. And you know, it's interesting, yesterday on our preview show, you were sitting on the fence a little bit. You wanted to pick him, but at the end of the day, you went with the champ. What was it about Woodley that made you really deep? It felt like you wanted to do it, but for some reason you couldn't pull the trigger. Now I'm sure you're kicking yourself.
Well, I will say that immediately before the fight, I did tweet, Woodley's going to knock him out in the first.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. When they were sitting in the cage, I've got no logical progression on it. It seemed, at that moment, if you would say bet your life, I would have been like, Tyron Woodley's going to knock him out immediately. It just felt it. Sometimes you get a feeling. Woodley spoke about him getting his feelings, and that's just what I had at that point. Like, he felt like the right call, and I think a lot of people felt that way coming into this. It wasn't just me saying, "Oh, Tyron Woodley's a live dog. He's really got a chance here." There were a lot of people that thought this might just be the time, and it turned out to be the time.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because there wasn't a lot of buzz going into this fight for various reasons. They didn't put a lot of promotional muscle behind him, and he was a little annoyed about that. But I really do believe that Tyron Woodley is a very promotable champion. He's incredibly smart, gives great interviews, great answers. He's a different kind of cat in the way he just views his career. Do you agree? Like, yeah, maybe he doesn't have a ton of momentum behind him now, but with that kind of finish and the way he conducts himself, they might have something here.
No, absolutely. I think they missed a big opportunity not pushing him, and I don't know why they wouldn't have done that more, and they're kicking themselves right now about it. You saw in the post-fight presser, I thought his post-fight press conference was phenomenal. All three questions they let us ask him, they really rushed him out quick. But, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the new stage in fighting where everyone just seeks the big money fight per se. I do still want some of the sporting aspect, but if you're going to do it, Tyron Woodley had the right way to do it. You know, when somebody asked him about Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he said, no, Wonderboy wanted Robbie Lawler. He can get that fight. Yeah. That is a phenomenal answer. And he's got spark. He's got charisma. That's why he's an analyst on Fox Sports. I think he can do a lot of good things if they give him the push. And frankly, if they don't give him the push, I think he's the kind of guy who's going to do it himself. Yeah,
so what do you think of his two plans? First off, he says that he wants to fight Nick Diaz in 21 days at UFC 202 in the co-main event of the Conor-Nate card. That's obviously not going to happen. He says if Nick's not available, GSP at MSG. So obviously the guy has big plans. Even on Thursday, he was telling us no to, as he put it, Wonder Woman and the rest of the welter whiners. He wants to make money. Do you think he's going to get his wish, or does he get who everyone believes is the #1 contender, Stephen Thompson?
He's definitely not getting the Nick Diaz fight. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to happen for a whole host of reasons, not the least of which the Diaz brothers have come out saying they don't want to fight on the same card, and that seemed to be a lot of Tyron's pitch that, well, they're fighting, you can do it together, and they don't want to do that. And Nick's in just a lot of reasons. That's clearly not the case. Stephen Thompson is the presumptive #1 guy, and that's the fight he's going to get unless they do get a deal with George St. Pierre. If George St. Pierre comes back and wants to fight for the welterweight title, there's nobody that's stopping that from happening. He has the ability to make that call, and it's whether he wants to make that call. I don't know if GSP really wants that fight, or maybe he wants that fight a little more now. He sees something in Tyron Woodley. That's the only way that Thompson doesn't get the next shot. Otherwise, I feel pretty confident they're going to make that happen. And I can understand why Woodley doesn't want to take that fight. Thompson doesn't have nearly as big a name as other people, and he's an incredibly dangerous threat to him. It's a real tough first defense with not nearly the upside of a GSP or a Nick Diaz.
Putting you on the spot right now, gun to your head, Wonderboy Thompson versus Tyron Woodley. Who are you picking?
Oh, that doesn't put me on the spot. I would pick Wonderboy Thompson.
Really interesting.
I personally think Wonderboy Thompson may very well be the best welterweight. The only person I would pick over him in a fight right now is Carlos Condit, because I think Condit's pressure game and his ability to just close the gap and keep being relentlessly forward is too much for Thompson to handle. We saw, and granted it was a while ago, but Matt Brown used a lot of that very effectively against Stephen Thompson. I think Thompson's range game, you can't count Tyron Woodley out of that fight. Obviously, he just showed he has phenomenal power in his hands. He closes the distance incredibly quickly, and that's really what hit Robbie Lawler. Robbie and Tyron are open stance. That means southpaw versus orthodox fighter. There's a lot of distance to cover. Robbie thought he was safe. He was not safe. So Thompson could close my mistake. Woodley could close the distance on Thompson, but Thompson's really good at controlling that range, at fighting long. He's got good pop in his hands. I would heavily favor Stephen Thompson in that fight.
On the flip side, this ends Robbie Lawler's title reign. And, he was asked this question by Brett Okamoto of ESPN at the post-fight press conference. Did all the damage he's taken, especially as of late, finally catch up to him? There's no way we can really know the real answer to that question. But what do you think? Do you think that, just time, damage, longevity, it just caught up to Robbie Lawler?
I don't know if damage has caught up to him so much as just getting old in general. He's 34 and he's had a hard 34. That's city miles 34. I'm not sure that a prime Robbie Lawler can eat a flush right hand from Tyron Woodley, because not many people can. He really has that type of pop, and he covers the distance well. But I think you can, if you look back at Lawler's fights, and that was one of the reasons that I was very reticent about picking Lawler. I think Lawler has all the technical skill advantages over Tyron Woodley, but he has been, you can see some physical depreciation, that he's picking his spots a lot more, and he's getting by on craft less or more so than his natural talents. And so I think that it's pretty obvious to say, or relatively uncontroversial to say, that he is declining, but that doesn't mean his best days are out, or even that he couldn't win the title back. I think you would have to favor Tyron Woodley if they did do an immediate rematch. But again, Tyron Woodley is known to fade after 10 minutes. If Robbie Lawler can avoid the left hand, or the right hand, can avoid moving to his left, he's got a lot of technical advantage. He could definitely still win the title. I don't know if we will see that from him, because there is a backlog of contenders, and so it's going to be harder, because he's going to have to put together a couple of wins in a division that's only getting better.
Maybe we now finally see Robbie Lawler versus Nick Diaz too. That's the fight, right?
If Nick Diaz is trying to fight, how do you not? Unless you do Michael Bisping. We talked about it already.
Sure.
Nick Diaz, Michael Bisping. But yeah, that seems like a no-brainer fight to me.
All right, let's talk about the co-main event now. Karolina Kowalkiewicz of Poland defeats Rose Namajunas. She wins 2 out of the 3 rounds in most people's eyes, and now the UFC is saying that she is going to fight Joanna Jędrzejczyk for the UFC strawweight title. This is Poland versus Poland, or as she put it in the post-fight press conference, Polish power versus Polish power. And she was very assertive. She wants that fight. She said on Thursday she wants it at MSG. Dana White saying tonight it makes sense, obviously, to have it in Poland. First, let me ask you this. Do you think Karolina deserved to win that fight?
Oh, absolutely. I think... I mean,
what did you do? 1 round for Rose, 2 for her, first round for Rose?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That seems like the only really defensible scorecard. Granted, I was on press row, so I don't have the best view, but from most people around me, and everybody seemed to very clearly think it was that way, aside from the one judge. I'm not sure who actually scored it for Rose, but round 2 was competitive at points, but Karolina clearly was dominating in the clinch tie-ups and was effective at range. Not as effective as Rose. Rose was doing well there, but she was kneeing just the crap out of her, and I think that should have clearly given her the round, and it did on 2 judges' scorecards.
What kind of a chance do you give Karolina against Joanna?
So during the fight, I saw that there's theory that she's going to come out as like a plus 700 underdog, and that seems crazy because that's an enormous. But I do think that it's a tough road to hoe for Karolina. She has some advantages. She does push a higher pace than Joanna, which would be the first time Joanna's ever fought somebody. They've actually fought before as amateurs. Joanna, I believe it was a rear naked choke. I could be wrong about that. I think she ended up choking her out.
But she won.
Yeah, Joanna won it in the amateurs, and so Caroline has been trying to get that back. She has some advantages. She also has some pretty stark disadvantages going in that. When she says Polish power versus Polish power, it's a lot more like Joanna's Polish power versus Polish volume. Joanna
doesn't have quite the same ring, though.
It does not. Joanna thumps. When she hits, it's detritive. It wears you down. Claudia Gadelha was just gasping for air from punches. Carolina's real ability to do that to Rose was all her body work in the clinch, all the knees in the clinch. Everything else, she did land a good right hand that ended up kind of dropping Rose while she was in the middle of a takedown. But she doesn't really have that same type of power that Joanna's going to bring to the table, and that's going to be a hard workaround for Carolina, I think.
Okay, and let's talk about now the shocker of the night. Jake Ellenberger finishing Matt Brown in the first round. Who saw this coming? Obviously you didn't, because you didn't pick it. You did pick Carolina, by the way, so props on that. I should say that. But wow, Jake Ellenberger shocking us all, defeating Matt Brown in the first round. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around this one. Make sense of it.
I'm with you. It's really hard.
Especially considering how he's looked as of late.
Considering everything about it, like all the factors of it. In my picks column for MMA Fighting, I did lay out a scenario in which Jake Ellenberger could win, because Matt Brown is a fighter with clear deficiencies. He's still not a good defensive wrestler. He is durable, but he's weak to the body. But Jake Ellenberger has never really shown authoritative attack to the body that would do what he did tonight. I thought if Jake Ellenberger could turn back the clock, maybe he can just get some power doubles and sit on him for 10 minutes and then win a decision if he can survive the third round, because Matt Brown will keep coming forever. I did not see him being able to hurt Matt Brown with that punch that he did early. He threw a right hand that landed cleanly, and Matt Brown's always been a very durable fighter. Even though Jake Ellenberger is one of the biggest hitters in the division, he's been very durable, and he did survive it. But then that body kick was crushing, just right to the liver, ruined his whole day. And nobody saw it coming. It was fantastic to see Jake Ellenberger turn back the clock. He has been working with Rafael Cordero, I think the last 2 or 3 fight camps. I'm not entirely sure on that. And it's clearly paying dividends. It worked out well for him tonight, and I hope this is not an anomaly. I hope that it's him back to where we all thought he was going to be so long ago, because it's nice to have a new contender. I mean, he's not a contender yet. One win does not a contender make, but it would be nice to have him back being a serious threat. And maybe he can get an easier fight, somebody that's not ranked for the first time in forever.
Maybe Jorge Masvidal, who earlier in the evening said he'd like to fight the winner of that fight. You like that idea?
I do like that idea. Did Jorge Masvidal say he wanted to fight him at 202? I feel like he was trying to fight him quickly. I don't love that short of a turnaround for Jorge, but I think that's a fun, interesting fight. Jorge he's a really talented fighter, regardless of weight class. I don't think he does his best work at 170, but it's a good fight, and I'd be interested to watch it.
Yeah, Jorge Masvidal picking up a win over Ross Pearson. Rounding out the pay-per-view main card, Eric Perez picking up a nice win over Francisco Rivera. Also Ryan Benoit picking up a win over Freddie Serrano. There were some other notable performances. Nikita Krylov knocking out Ed Herman with an unbelievable head kick. How about Anthony Hamilton's super quick knockout as well? Damian Brown with a nice win, and Wilson Hayes really proving his point, at least in action, not so much on the mic, defeating Hector Sandoval. Any other performance you want to mention before we say goodnight?
I think you ran down the clearly exciting ones. Wilson Hayes looked amazing. I don't love that he called out Ian McCall afterwards. Even though I love that fight, frankly he got in and out quick. If you can turn that around for 202 or 203 into a Hayes McCall fight, that's a gangbusters fight. But Wilson Hayes had a title shot, and it got taken away by circumstance. He shouldn't be calling for that. He should be, Demetrius, look, I know this. We're supposed to dance. Let's do it again. And Nikita Krylov looked good. He has been an interesting case study in MMA fandom, because he came in as a heavyweight. He's so Palele, and everybody kind of viewed him as a joke. He was Al Capone and was kind of gimmicky, and he didn't really look like he might be one of the worst fighters that would ever credibly in the UFC. And now he's on a 5-fight winning streak against good names. He shows marked improvement every time out, and that's really all you can ask for. At this point, you have to accept that Nikita Krylov is a good MMA fighter and an exciting one. And that's fantastic because light heavyweight needs all the help it can get. I don't know how. I think he has a ceiling somewhere, but we haven't found it yet. And he picked up a great, stunningly impressive win. That head kick was traumatic.
You took the words out of my mouth in the sense that that division is so shallow right now. It's so thin because of the dominance of John Jones and Daniel Cormier. There is really a lack of up-and-coming, interesting talent. Perhaps he is one to keep an eye on. I say this sincerely, my man. Tremendous job. Really, you knocked it out of the park. It was a pleasure covering the event with you all week. Great insight. You really did great. So kudos.
Thank you very much. It has been a fantastic time. You have been great. Casey has been wonderful, and Esther too. Just thank you all for making my first credentialed experience so good.
Awesome. Well, you know, as the great Vince Scully once said, in the year of the improbable, the impossible has happened. I won't say that Tyron Woodley winning the UFC welterweight title in this fashion was impossible, but once again, as was the case with UFC 198, 199, 200, and tonight at 201, we've highlighted how unpredictable this crazy sport is. And anyone who tells you that that is a detriment to the sport just doesn't understand the beauty of MMA. This is what MMA is all about. Tyron Woodley, who came really from the prelims, the unaired prelims, worked his way up, the first ever American Top Team produced champion, comes out here when everyone was sort of ho-humming his title shot, comes out here and knocks out Robbie Lawler. Unbelievable stuff. That does it for our coverage from here in Atlanta. Thank you so much for watching all week long. For Jed, I'm Ariel. Good night. See you Monday for the MMA Hour.